Hello, in this video we're going to have a look at some of the basic commands. A lot of these commands you'll be able to use already, but I'm just going to cover them again here. So the first thing to look at is the line command. So I can choose the line command up here using this icon. You know that you can hover over it and you get some information on how the command works. So I'm going to click it. You could either type line here in space, or you could come down to this ribbon down here and type line and choose the command that way as well, but clicking the icon is the easiest thing to do. The first thing it wants you to do is specify the first point of that line. Now you could either click in space here and begin a line anywhere you like, or you can choose an actual location, like an end point. I'm just going to click in free space here. Click. The next thing you can do is either click on some other point, or you can input some data into that blue box. If you press Tab, you can see that you can also input data for not only the length but also the angle that you wish to draw your line at. So I'll just make it 1000 long, press enter. You can press escape to come out of the command, or you can continue drawing lines. If you press enter after leaving a command, it will automatically bring up the previous command that you chose, in this case the line command again. To delete a line, you can either use this erase tool, but I find that the easiest thing to do is just to click on the line, wait till the grips show up and hit the delete button. If you want a polyline, I'll just hover over that to let you see what it is. A polyline is slightly different. This is when you would draw a series of lines, but instead of them all being individual lines that you can pick, it will highlight all of those lines in one shot when you click on it to highlight it. So here's how you draw a polyline. Again, click here. You could type poly and choose the command that way. So we'll specify a start point. And in this case, I'm going to show you how to draw lines which are orthogonal. So I'm going to turn on the ortho restrict. And now I can only draw up and down, left and right. So I'm just going to randomly place a few objects here, and I can line up just by hovering over the first position. Click there, and then I'll join them. I'm going to press escape to leave the command. So we're out of the command. Now if I click on that line, you can see that it's going to want to highlight the whole lot. So that's sometimes useful. If you want to break these back into their individual component lines, you can type EXP, which is short for this second command down, which is the explode command. And what that will do is it should allow you to highlight all of these objects. Press enter to tell it you're finished choosing objects. And now they're back to being individual line segments. So I'm going to delete that. I could either delete all this by removing each line individually. I'll just redo. Or I could left click the mouse up here in the top left someplace, drag this net over the top of everything and left click again. It selects the whole thing, then press the delete key to get rid of it. But I'll show you another way. So we're going to rewind a little bit again, undo. If I go down to the bottom right and click and drag, you'll see now that that net is now green. The net will pick up everything that you have inside of it, but also the parts of lines and segments and things that stick out from the net. So you can see here, this line here is not completely within the confines of that net, but if I click up here, you see it's still highlighted it even although it was outside the net. So I'll show you that one more time. So top left down, only going to pick the components that are fully inside that net. These two components, these two segments of line. But if I start from the bottom right and move up, anything that's in the net and still sticks out, it will select it. So that's a useful way of picking things up. So we will just delete these objects just now. Let's have a look at how to draw an arc. So I'll pull the menu down and we'll see what kind of arcs we have. We have start, center, end, start, center, angle. I'll maybe hover over that just to give you a chance to read them. Start, center, end. You can see that the points which you highlight will be the points that this particular command needs to have in that order so that it can draw the type of arc that you want. There's various. So we'll just choose the first one, start, center, end. So specify a start point for an arc. I'll just click in space. I'll turn off the ortho restrict for this. The second point of that arc and an end point for that arc, we'll say here. And there you have an arc drawn. So you should play with these commands. So I'm going to delete that. Now I did intend to just start off drawing lines, but it's important that you have some idea of how to use these commands as well. Let's create a rectangle. So if I hover over this icon, you see it's a rectangle. It needs two positions on the model space in order to draw a rectangle. You still get the option to input lengths and so on, but you can play with that yourself. So I'm just going to choose rectangle, hover on the screen someplace, specify the first corner point of that rectangle here, and I'm going to move along to a second point. See how you get the blue boxes where you can input individual lengths for the sides of this, and again with the tab key you can tab between either the height of your rectangle or its length. I'll just click here. There's a rectangle. If I highlight it, it will choose it as one individual item. And again, you can grab the grips and move it around and change it into any type of shape that you require. In the drop down for the rectangle command, there is the option to do a polygon. So enter the number of sides that you require your polygon to have. So I will randomly choose 8 sides. We will draw an octagon. I press enter to tell it that I'm happy. It says specify a center point. So again, you could choose any of the points that you've got here, like some midpoints, endpoints, but again, we'll draw one just in the middle of the screen. And this is an option that comes up. Do you want these lines of your polygon to be inscribed in the circle or circumscribed around about that circle? So we'll try the first command first. And it wants to know a radius. So we'll say 600. Press enter to input that data. And here you have your octagon. So we'll try that again. You'll see it remembers the input from the previous command. 8 is already there, so all you need to do is press enter. We'll give it a center point just over here, and this time I will type in circumscribed around the circle, and we'll specify a radius, and again we'll make it 600. So if I now draw a circle, you can see that this has been generated from a radius 600 circle that came from the center to the inside of that flat edge. I can prove that by going to the measuring, choosing the radius, and I will click on the circle and you'll see 600. If I draw a circle on this one, from the center, end point, that should be a radius 600 circle. Yeah, see that? 600. That's the difference between being inscribed within the circle or circumscribed around about the circle. So be advised, that might be something that you need to use going forward. So I will select all of these and delete them. Hatching. So in order to hatch, we need an enclosed space. So I'll just draw another rectangle. There's my rectangle. Now I'm going to go to the hatch command and just allow you to see the different types of hatching we can have. This is a straightforward hatch, so I would use that to fill the complete boundary of an object. I can have a gradient hatch. This is more like a rendering effect, if you like. And down here in boundary, rather than having actual boundaries for a hatching, I can create a small area within my drawing which doesn't seem to have any boundary lines. I can cause that to be filled with a hatching. So I'll just choose the regular one. It's preset to a specific type of hatching, and what happens is this menu here comes up. It's the hatch creation menu, and you get the option to choose different types of hatching. If I just click inside here, because that's what it's asking me to do, pick internal point, you can see that I get some pretty horrific hatching. If I zoom into that, and this is where my graphics card might crash, you can see this is the type of hatching that we've chosen. I'm going to zoom back out, and I'm going to undo that because I don't like it. So I'm going to go back to the hatch command, and this time I'm going to choose, we'll try ANSI 31, and we can alter the scale on this hatching as well so that it doesn't appear very close up like that. So we'll press enter to say that I'm happy with that, but now you can see it doesn't look very great, and that's because of the scale we're in. So if I right click on, or left click and right click on the hatching, I get the properties menu, and what I can do in here is I can go in pattern scale. So if I click on that and open the little, and I could, let's try 50 and apply. You can see that it's changed the spacing between this hatching, and that is, one, far better to look at, and two, a lot easier for your computer system to cope with. So let's mirror this object. So first of all, I'm going to choose the mirror command, and you can see roughly how this command is going to work. I'll actually type mirror this time. Choose it that way. It wants me to select objects, so I will choose all of those objects, and I'll tell it I'm finished choosing by pressing enter. And then it wants you to specify a mirror point. So if I want to get the reflection of this object over onto the left hand side, then my mirror point would be from here, and it's going to want the second mirror point, so I'll choose down there, and if I click, there's one more pop-up. Do you wish to erase the source object? We'll say no, because I want to keep this. And you've mirrored it, so I can undo that command. If you press yes, you want to erase, what you'll end up with is a mirror image of this, but the original will disappear. So it's important to read these commands. Let's have a look at a fillet command. So this command can be a stumbling block for students. if you look at the cursor, you can see that it's asking you to select a first object, but there's also the option, if you look very closely, you can see the small white box with the arrow. That's directing you down to the ribbon down here, and it wants to know how you want to set this command up. We will choose radius because it is, after all, a fillet. It wants you to specify a fillet radius. I'm going to fillet at 4. No, smaller, 2. Press enter. Now it wants you to choose the first object. So if I zoom in, just using the mouse wheel, I'll select that as my first object, and then you're prompted to select the second object. And if I zoom right in there, you can see that we've applied a tiny 2mm fillet to the edge or the corner of this object. You can see the difference. Not filleted, filleted. In the fillet drop-down menu, you get the option to chamfer as well. Now, a chamfer is an operation that if you were doing woodworking and you had a plank of wood and you wanted to remove the corner of that plank of wood along its length, that would be a chamfer. You would use a plane for that. So again, we get select the first line, or it's directing you down to here. You can do this by angle or you can do it by distance. I'll choose distance. It wants to know a distance. So I'm going to choose 5 and I'll press enter. So that's 5mm. And it also wants to know the second distance, because essentially what this command is going to do is it's going to trim off 5 mils along this line. And for the second chamfer, if I press enter to accept 5 again, it will trim off 5mm along this line. So now you're prompted to choose your first line. Doesn't matter which one you choose, as long as it's part of the corner. And then it asks you to select a second line. So I'll select this line, and it will trim off that corner. So we'll come back to blocks, we'll do that last. Let's have a look at some curves. Now, admittedly, I've never actually had to use a curve command, so what I'm going to do is I'll hover over that. I'm going to have a look at blend curves. Creates a tangent or smooth spline between the endpoints of 2 open curves. So let's draw a couple of curves. We'll do that using the arc tool. So a 3-point arc. 1, 2, 3. I'll repeat the command by pressing enter, and I'll draw something down here. 1, 2, 3. Let's now press escape to leave that command and try to use the bend or blend curve command. So 1, 2. Select the first object. 1. Select the second object. 2. And you can see it's created a nice smooth curve based on the geometry of these 2 initial arcs. Fairly simple. Let's try to offset. Now, if I choose the offset command, all this does is it offsets an existing line by a set value that you input. So, first of all, you have to specify the offset distance. There is also the option to come down here and choose some other parameters that you can alter. So I'm going to make my offset distance 20. And now it wants you to select an object to offset. So I'll choose this line here. And now it wants you to specify a point on either side of the line that you've chosen in order to create that offset. So if I zoom in a little bit, if I move the mouse to the right and click, I would get a line on that side. I can press enter just to get the command back. I can choose that line again, and if I move to the left this time, you'll see that it will offset a line to the left. Fairly straightforward, that command. I'll just delete these two lines. Move command is very handy. So up here you have the option to select a number of lines or items as a group and move them to a different location. So move, choose everything, tell it you're done choosing, specify a base point of your choice, then you can move this and locate it. So I'm just going to delete these objects again. We've looked at circles, we've looked at curves. Let's have a look at some text. So you have options. You can input single lines of text, or you can input multiple lines of text. I will show you the mtext command for multi-line text. This is the command that I commonly use. So type mtext, mtext. Choose mtext, it's the top option. It wants a first corner and it wants a second corner. And then this ribbon will appear. You can simply type your text in here. So type in here. You can use this essentially the same as any word processor. So if I press the caps lock button, then I get caps. Usually in a drawing you're going to use capital letters all of the time. If I press enter, it moves down a line. Let's say we need some sort of interesting symbol. You can see that this text editor tab has opened up and created a ribbon along the top. If you need some interesting symbols, there's this @ sign here with a drop down. In here we have, you can either click, it automatically changes to a degree symbol. So we'll have a look at some other commands that are in there. So I'll just space along slightly and I'll open that again. If we wanted plus minus, then it's %%p. %%p. You get the plus minus symbol. Scroll along slightly with the spacebar and I'll show you another option. Down at the bottom, if you don't have a shortcut for the type of thing that you wish to input into your multi-line text, you can go to Other. And this is the same window that you would see in Microsoft Word. So you can scroll down through here and say we wanted that particular symbol. We'll choose something interesting. If we wanted this, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to select it. And then you can either copy it like that, or you can copy using the copy button. Jump back to here, right click, paste. When you've finished typing what you need to have in the text, you simply click outside of the box. There's your text. If it's in the wrong layer, you can highlight it. You can go to layers and you can choose where you want to put it. So it was in text. I'm going to move it to dimensions and leaders simply because I think it looks better on the screen for these demonstrations. I'm going to press enter. You can change the layer of any item in the same way. So if I choose this line, go to the layers menu, and I want to change it into an engineering line, simply click on that, hit enter. It's been moved into this layer. Adding dimensions. I'm going to draw a basic box and I want to add some dimensions. Now for this you need to be in the dimension layer and we need to have a look and see what our scale is set to. So over here, let's pull down and see what kind of dimensions we can put in. We can put linear. These are for dimensions that go horizontally or vertically. I can put in an aligned dimension. So if I have an angled line and I want the dimension to run parallel to that angled line, I can use that. I can work out the length of arcs. So on this, I could use that command, arc length, and it wants me to choose that line, and then it tells me the arc length. So let's go to linear. I'm going to place a dimension here on the endpoint, and I'm going to move it across to the other endpoint. Then I'm going to move upwards and click. Try that one more time. So I'm going to add in a vertical dimension here. Again, use your pick points. That's a node, an endpoint here, and place the dimension. If you want rid of these two decimal positions, there are two ways you can do that. We can actually tell AutoCAD to reduce the number of decimal positions that it displays. We will probably cover that in a different video. But very quickly, you can double click on the actual text. This window will pop up and we can overwrite what is written there. We'll just call it 375. And we can delete the remainder. Then you click outside of the dimension box and it updates to 375. Let's have a look and see what happens if we change the scale. So I'm going to click on this annotation scale for this particular view, and instead of having it at 1 to 30, I'm going to change it at 1 to 4. You'll notice that all the dimensions scale down. It's worthwhile picking the correct dimension scale that relates to the size of the objects that you're drawing. So again, I think it was 1 to 30 that I was in. The reason for that is this edge of this box is 744.34 millimeters long. And I need to scale up the size of these dimensions so that they appear normalized on the screen. If I click on a dimension and right click, it should open, if you scroll down, the properties menu. And if I go to, scroll down to text, you'll see that the text height on the screen is 2.5 millimeters. Now, you don't want to change that here because you would probably have to do it for all your dimensions individually, or if you highlight several of them, you could change the 2.5 to a larger number to simply make this text appear at a reasonable scale. But we don't really want to do that, and that's why AutoCAD has given us the option to choose different scales. But be advised that when you move over into the Engineering A3 PDF, just click on that to move there, and I'll scroll out and we'll try and find this drawing exercise that we've been working on. There it is. You would have to set the scale corresponding down here. So your dimensions don't exist there until you choose 1 to 30. And here you have them at the correct display scale for the items that you've drawn. Now, we spoke a little bit about viewports. We had this viewport. That's one viewport. You can have multiple viewports. I could have one viewport that is designed to accept drawings and dimensions which are at a scale of 1 to 30. But I can have a second viewport down here, maybe for a tiny item like the hinge on this door, and maybe I would set the scale in that viewport, which we've not created here. I might save that to 1 to 1, 1 to 2, maybe even 1 to 4. That way I can have the picture of this hinge in a box down here with dimensions on it that you can read, and I can also have this great big rectangle in its own viewport set to a scale of 1 to 30 so that the dimensions appear as they do here. So, what is a block? A block is like a miniature drawing on its own. It's usually something that you can't edit. It's for when you need to do repetitive drawings. You may have a block that's created to represent a nut or a bolt. In this case, I have drawn a small image of a door that you might see on the floor plan of an architect's drawing of a building. My options for moving this and placing it on my drawing are I could copy it. So I could use the copy command, select it all, press enter, give it a base point, and then I have a copy that I can move around. But I don't want to do that. So what I want to do is I want to create a block that I can call up from a catalogue of various different blocks, and I can insert into my drawing whenever I like. So if I go to insert, so I need to go to the insert tab, and I pull down this menu here, you can see that there are some blocks that are already available to you. You could have a projection symbol for first angle, projection symbol for third angle. We'll pull down this machine surface finish symbol. So click on it and give it a place where you want to insert it. So I'll just click here. And yes, the scale on that is tiny, but if I zoom in, you can see it's placed there. So that's how you can take a block from the catalogue and actually place it. But it depends on whether the block that you want actually exists. Maybe this is the first time this object has been drawn and you need to change it into a block. So you have a create block icon here. So I'm going to click on create block and this window should pop up. I'm going to have to give that a name. So I'm going to call it door. And I'm also going to go a little bit further and I'm going to say that its base point is on the bottom left. And this is just so that you remember where the base point of this block is going to be. So what I need to do is I've got to tell it where that base point is. So I'm going to choose pick point and the image will disappear for a moment and I'm going to choose this bottom left endpoint here. So click on that, the window pops back up. Now it needs to know what objects. So if you were to select the objects by dragging a net over it, then you're going to run into issues because every time you place that block, it's going to have a net of dead space round about it. So the best way to do this is to choose this select objects. Choose that. Now it wants me to select the objects. And I have to go around and select each object individually. And this is where you need to make sure that you get them all. So I'm going to zoom in slightly just to see what I'm doing. Pan down. And you can see that there's actually quite some intricate detail here. So choose them all, one and another. Zoom out, see what you've got, what you need to choose that's remaining. And tell it that I'm finished by pressing enter. That window should appear again. Now, do you want this to be annotative? If you choose yes, then the size of your block will scale up and down depending on what you've set this to. I'm just going to leave mine the way it's set just now. And I'm going to give it some sort of description. Door block. You can add hyperlinks. You could add a hyperlink that takes you to a website where you can buy actual doors that you'll fit in a house. I'm not going to bother doing that. I've got 14 objects selected. I'm going to hit OK at that point. Now, when I go to the insert block command now, I'll pull that down, I can go to recent blocks. So there is my block that I've just created. You can see where it's stored. I'm going to choose that and I'm going to click. So you've got that insertion point, which is in the bottom left, and I'll just pop one there. And we can now close that. So you can see how this is useful. If I scroll out, I've actually drawn a very, very, very basic plan here. And I'm just going to insert multiple blocks. So recent blocks, and I'm going to choose my door. So it wants to know where to put it. I'll scroll in. So I can hover that there, place it. I can drag another one, and I can place that. And you could have as many doors on here as you like. You notice how my computer is becoming very sluggish. This is because AutoCAD is running quite a few things in the background. And one way to give it a little boost is to type the command regen, regen. And basically that's like it's like the button for reloading the page. If a page on the internet gets stuck, it just frees up. And you see now that I'm actually able to move the mouse around quite freely around the screen without it lagging. So that's blocks. And I think this has turned out to be quite a huge video. So I suppose I had better call it a day at that.